Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers, and elders in this podcast. My name is Craig Train, and it's the beautiful swampy lady in South Florida. And today's date is Monday, May 6th, 2019. So let us begin. Greetings, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Yes, the post Cinco de Mayo. Nice and rainy down here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I'm at Cafe Collective located at 100 North Federal Highway, C4, in the heart of downtown Fort Lauderdale. And the facility itself is right in the corner of Northeast 7th Avenue and Briar Boulevard. Yeah, so, you always going to have your knuckleheads out there on these holidays. And many of them may not know what the Battle of Puebla is all about. And I notice this purging is happening. I don't really talk about it as much because I know a lot of folks are. And it's interesting when they try to take all the Facebook's try to take all the profiles away from Alex Jones, Louis Farrakhan, Paul Joseph Watson, and many others. And I just love it, when some of the Orwellian saps and snowflakes get real touchy when you call them out in their bluff. Or some people like to tweet, "It's progress." Then I go, "All hail to the Orwellian saps, snowflakes, and saps." They put my hashtags in there too, Orwellian snowflakes and Orwellian saps. And some people get real offended. "Oh, what do you mean? But there's a check in here." Bah, 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 bah. You know how that goes. It's just one of those things. They don't like it. Given I tweet things, they get people to scratch their heads. They get offended. That's supposed to have some big protest thing happening today down at the government center in reference to election fraud. Trying to prevent it. Of course, they had a photo of Debbie Washington Schultz, and I put a meme on my meme as a comment, saying that I despise the supreme law of the land, but proudly represent the synagogue of Satan. Think about Congresswoman Debbie Washington Schultz. Someone says, "That is racist." That's what happens when people don't read. You never take the initiative to look up Revelation chapter 2 and 3, and those chapters, verse 9. People claim to be Jews, but they're liars, frauds, hypocrites, corrupt. That's what I mean by the synagogue of Satan. "Oh, racist, Nazis." Give me a break. I'm not one of these individuals that go belly up and kiss the floor these pathetic politicians do. Walk on. People want to kiss the floor. You got folks out there want to look at these individuals as their Lord and Saviors. Just dawns on me at times. Even individuals my age are trying to argue with me about it. I just laugh. I don't know. It's just one of those things. I'm not saying I'm better than them or anyone else. But I always try to take the initiative on learning things and seeing what they're about. And I call them up on their bluff based on their actions. Nothing more, nothing less. Sometimes you got people, when you tweet something, they assume you're being a wise ass, but in reality, I don't do that. Just be humbling at times. People like to prejudge. If you're going to do that to me, make sure you wear your "I love Richard Spencer" button while you're at it. Yeah, so I'm just going to be talking a few things here. A little bit mellow today. A little tired, but I said, what the hell. One of those days ago. The show must go on. Alright, enough of my ranting. And actually, this one came from consortiumnews.com. And this was entitled, "Incoming Elections, EU Parliament Faces Long List of Enemies." Really? I thought they're all like buddies and lovey-dovey. Let's hear what it has to say here. Attilio Muro explains why the EU's only directly elected legislative body is mounting such an energetic voter turnout campaign. Yeah, who wants to be elected in the Club of Rome? Well, that's what he has to say here. It's from Brussels. This is in Brussels. As the EU approaches what considered to be the most important elections in the history of its parliament, May 22nd to 26th, the EU has never had so many enemies. The list starts with U.S. President Donald Trump and extends to the Brexiters in the UK. It goes from Andrzej Duda, the Polish premier, to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, from the Czech Republic's Prime Minister Andrej Babis to the Romanian government. Italy also makes the list. Its unofficial Prime Minister Matteo Salvini has been advocating until he took office to exit from the Euro and possibly from the EU altogether. Other anti-EU leaders include Austrian Prime Minister Norbert Hofer, who assumed office on an anti-European platform, and France's Marie Le Pen. There's also the AfD party in Germany, and score a sizable anti-EU minorities in almost all European countries. The most aggressive of all has been Donald Trump, who went well beyond his American First slogan, calling the EU the trade enemy of the U.S. under his watch. EU/U.S. relations have never been so bad. The visions of the EU. The Trump administration's vision of the EU seems to involve everything from NATO. Europeans have to pay more, Trump keeps saying, to Iran. Washington trying to block Europe from dealing with Tehran. From trade to too many German cars in the U.S. to the environment, Trump backed out of the collective reduction of CO2, which is carbon dioxide, by the way, as internationally agreed in Paris. Trump has given confidence and strength to Brexiteers and every possible type of EU dissident, to the point that Poland's Duda has openly defied the EU's commission demand to abolish the illiberal law allowing its government to appoint the justices of the Supreme Court. Hungary's Orban could defy the European immigration policy by refusing to take in one single migrant. Trump is building a wall after all, and to the contrary, the European spirit of openness and against wishes of many of George Soros' friends in Brussels. Orban in 2018 managed to force most of the operations of the private university in Budapest, funded by the Hungarian-born billionaire philanthropist to move to Vienna. Czech Republic Babis is the richest man in the country, continues to flout warnings from Brussels about its violations of press freedom and independence of the judiciary. Remains displaying the most conspicuous insubordination in the case of Laura Kövesi, its former chief prosecutor who oversaw the convictions of thousands of politicians, officials, and business people. Now, Bucharest, which is holding the rotating presidency of the EU until the end of June, is trying to prevent Kövesi from leading the new European Public Prosecutor's Office, which will begin functioning in 2020. Romania's Justice Minister has been smearing her in letters to his EU counterparts, and the government briefly subjected her to a travel ban. The only government that opposes her nomination is her own. Sovereignism, the ideology that unifies most of the European enemies of the EU, is sovereignism, the idea that national interests should come before those of Europe, and that sharing wealth don't imply sharing policies and values. In line with Trump, sovereignists don't believe that the problems of the modern world can be dealt with through a multilateral approach. They will win, according to most estimates, a sizable share of the seats in the EU Parliament later this month. They will be supported by a substantial share of the European public opinion, mainly right-wing, which is at odds with what they consider to be an EU immigration policy that is too permissive. They will also be supported by plenty who feel that the EU institutions, including the EU Parliament, are bureaucratic and remote from ordinary people while too close to the lobbies. They have a point. Around 15,000 lobbyists are active in Brussels. It is not a mystery that they are very influential in the EU Parliament. Recently, it turned out that the EU's Liberal Party, the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, or ALDE, received hundreds of thousands of euro donations from Google, Bayer, Microsoft, Uber, Syngenta, and Deloitte. Always something, huh? Interesting. The leftists of the GUE, NGL, and the Greens will fiercely oppose corporate lobbying. But with those two exceptions, there's a good reason to believe that all major political groups have received this much money and more. One of the most striking cases of the EU corporate influence is that of Bayer Monsanto, which managed last year to renew its European license for the weed killer Roundup, which had been defined by leading research institutions as an endocrine disruptor with links to cancer. In addition to corporate corruption, anti-EU sentiment includes those opposed to the neoliberal economic policies, privatization of public companies, cuts in social spending, deregulation imposed in the last 20 years by the EU institutions, which not only failed to revive the economy but brought southern European countries to the brink of bankruptcy. And you can thank the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund for that as well, in my personal view. Despite the widespread frustrations, most European citizens consider the EU as a vital in the era of globalization, and a reasonable percentage of the European constituency will turn out to elect their delegates to Brussels. But the EU Parliament senses the threat it is facing is running an unprecedented voter turnout campaign. In every European airport now, huge and very expensive billboards inform travelers of what the EU has done for their country. Have parliamentarians arrange more transparency in the way they do business, or had they passed a proposal that has been languishing for decades for passage, which would oblige lobbies to register, that might have been more effective than billboards. He's absolutely correct. So, and remember, the truth of the matter is that the European Union is a Club of Rome agenda. 10 regions to rule the world. North American Union is one of them. And of course, the African Union, the Oceania, and Japan is considered a chartered nation, chartered jurisdiction from the Club of Rome itself. So it's going to be very exciting what's going to happen with this election, because there's a lot of folks in there, the ones that are addressing this article, want decentralization, want sovereignty, and I think that's very good. I'm not praising these individuals like they're the best thing since sliced bread, but one thing for sure, a lot of the eyes are opening up. And how far does the rabbit hole go? It'll be very interesting in this month of May for the European Union. Alright, next one here. This one's funny. Came out May 5th. Supreme Court says no NYC'S Second Amendment avoidance scheme. This is by Sean Walton from the Daily Sheeple. On Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to buy into New York City's transparent scheme to avoid the court's review, and wisely denied the city's request to indefinitely to put a hold on New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus the City of New York. The Supreme Court first true Second Amendment case since 2010. For years, residents of New York have been required to apply for a premises license to own a handgun, the Sullivan Law to be exact. Worse, city officials placed a number of restrictions on what a resident can do with a firearm possessed pursuant to a large license. Most egregiously, license holders may not transport their handguns outside the city limits, even to another home owned by the resident or at a licensed shooting range or completion. Can you say that the City of New York is anti-Roe versus Wade? Okay, I'll just continue on here. Yep. Even to another home by a resident or a licensed shooting range or competition. 6 years ago, New York State Rifle Pistol has filed this lawsuit, and for 6 years, New York has fervently defended its ruling. maintaining it is necessary for public safety, that is, until the Supreme Court agreed to review the constitutionality of the regulation. Well, sorry, folks, to be very... New York City needs to start reading Article 1, Section 1 of their state constitution. After that, shut the hell up. New York officials came up with a new scheme and offered proposed changes to the regulation. These proposed changes are in direct response to the lawsuit providing exceptions to handgun owners for transferring their guns to vacation home shooting ranges or shooting competitions outside city limits. But these are only proposed changes, no guarantee that they will never be implemented. The Supreme Court saw through the New York scheme. The court denied the state's request to delay briefing until New York resolved its rulemaking process. As a result, the briefing will go forward on the first true Second Amendment case since McDonald versus Chicago. New York State's rifle and pistol opening brief is expected on May 7th, and the amicus brief and support are expected to be released May 14th. So that's going to be very exciting to check out. And one thing you got, like I said, even the state of New York got a lot of awesome people up there too. You got these dip saps from Albany and New York City. Don't even know how to tie their own shoelace. We're going to try to tell you how to live and think. Yeah, to all you de Blasio worshippers and Cuomo bootlickers up there. I like being sarcastic. Or sometimes you gotta laugh at these politicians, like they're saps. Orwellian saps. You know? Or a cowbell around their neck. Who let the cows out? But I like this. It's very good, and I'm very pleased that at least there's the Supreme Court has some sense. But the state itself needs to go on their own jurisdictional level to fight these parasites. They are nothing without you folks, the people who live up there, including New York City. Give them a big middle finger, wipe your rear end on the Sullivan Law, and shove it down their throats. That's how I see it. You know what's interesting about that, because the whole licensing and so forth, it actually would have to focus on the blacks, the Italians, and the Jews. Remember, he was an Irish bigot, and I'm not against the Irish. It'd be awesome folks up there too. I use a little slogan called "Make Bigot," and I say that out of love. But the fact is this: that guy was a fool, Sullivan, and they still want to pursue this. Give me a break. None of your damn business. Period. That's what I'm saying. Anti-Roe versus Wade. All right, the next one here came from Free Thought Project. Came out yesterday. Man arrested for facing a year in prison for telling police they are pissing on the Constitution. Which one? The state or federal? But since after police refused to respond for his calls to assistance, the Texas man gave police a peaceful piece of his mind, but it was landed him in jail. And it says here, warning that a government must not be given the power to criminalize speech it seems distasteful or annoying. The Rutherford Institute has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to stop prosecution of a Texas man who faced up 1 year in jail and a $4,000 fine for sending emails to police criticizing them for failing to respond to his request for assistance. An argument's brief filed with the Supreme Court, Rutherford Institute's attorneys argued the prosecution of Scott Ogle for sending complaints to a sheriff's office, including one email stating that we're pissing on the Constitution. Violates the First Amendment. It even violates their own Texas Constitution, for goodness sakes. And I will continue on here. For freedom of speech and a right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Moreover, Institute attorneys argue that the Texas law under Ogle was charged and makes it a crime to send annoying, alarming, harassing electronic messages. It is so overboard that it could be used to punish a negative review of a restaurant posted online or a caustic Facebook post. You should probably have me arrested then or ban me, right? I'll just continue on here. It was Justice William O. Douglas affirmed rights of Americans to speak softly or angrily to government officials, even if our words challenge and annoy. We need not to stay docile and quiet, nor we bow submissively to authority and speak with awe and reverence to those who represent us. As the genius of the First Amendment, said Constitutional Attorney John D.W. Whitehead, president of the Refutes Institute and the author of Battlefield America, the War on the American People. Nowhere in the First Amendment does it permit the government to limit speech in order to avoid causing offensive, hurting someone's feelings, safeguarding government secrets, and protecting government officials, insinuating judges from the undue influence, discouraging bullying, penalizing hateful ideas and actions, eliminating terrorism, combating prejudice and intolerance, and the like. In 2016, a frustrated Scott Ogle emailed Hayes County Sheriff's Office over their alleged attention to his request for help. In his emails, Ogle accused one of the officers of being your typical arrogant, condescending, belligerent self who chooses to slip the other way. Another email stated, "You have the Constitution to uphold, son, and so you're pissing on it." And it refers to a deputy as a little bitch and a little state weasel. Based on these emails, Ogle was charged with a crime under the provision of the Texas Penal Code for making repeated electronic messages in a manner reasonably likely to harass, annoy, alarm, abuse, torment, embarrass, or offend another. The laws also require that the message be sent with the same intent. A violation of the statute is punishable by up to 1 year in jail and a $4,000 fine. Excuse me there. Prior to trial, Ogle's attorney argued that the statute violates the First Amendment, which assumes the right of freedom of speech and the petition to the government may redress for grievances, because it criminalizes a substantial amount of the constitutionality of protected speech. However, both state trial and appellate courts reject Ogle's constitutional defense, and asking the U.S. Supreme Court to review Ogle's case and strike down the Texas statute. The Wilford Institute argues that even if Ogle's emails were in bad taste, the government must not have the power to judge and punish speech because of his judgment that the speech is rude. Point out that statutes similar to the one being applied to Ogle have been held unconstitutional by other state and federal courts. Institute attorneys also have argued the Supreme Court to resolve the conflict between those ruling and the ruling in Ogle's case. Affiliate attorney Chris Moretti assisted the Refutes Institute in presenting its arguments. To be very frank, it does violate free speech under the Texas Constitution, so that's one thing you have to really look at. And I think Article 1, they have a Bill of Rights 2 in that area, and it does say free speech and the press should not be infringed. So it's not that difficult, but I just want to say how far can you go on this? That's one thing. You may be more aggressive, that's okay. And another thing you got to look at too, my friends, legally the police are obligated to protect you as an individual. Even Texas has a law which is sovereign immunity tort liability, and you can look that up. Just type that in. You'd be surprised. You see it for yourselves. And what happens is just consider public employees. So you have to. It tells you all about it in those little laws. But the truth of the matter is, I say, hey, fight the good fight, man. I like this, and hopefully Ogle will win his case. That'll be incredible. In due time, folks, keep on keeping these individuals on their toes. Okay, so far so good, and I'll be right back. Okay, folks, I am back. Let's just see what we got here. This came from bearingarms.com. I know it's like what's going on. Looks like the governor has signed the public safety law bill this year, stating that the teachers have that right to be armed. And of course, you got a lot of folks who are wigging out, and they haven't. And we can't makes this unsafe. But here's the thing: what have you learned? What these people have learned? What these people learned from Columbine, 99, 9/11 in 2001, and Stoneman Douglas. With that mindset, we shouldn't have it. Not a damn thing. Study the past. It's today's greatest teacher. Don't be a dope. But it says here, study refutes claims that armed teachers make schools unsafe. It's by Tom Knighton, And this is says here, anti-gun-zealots continue to trip over themselves to illustrate how unsafe Army teachers is. Formally disputing their so-called studies hasn't been exactly difficult. Poking holes in studies is one thing, but creating a study to look at the real concerns is quite another. And that's where John Lott comes in. Lott specializes in conducting studies to look at real problems. He took a look at the issue of armed teachers since we have several states that have allowed teachers to be armed and found the fears to be unfounded. And it says here, John Lott's latest study refutes claims by anti-gunners that the presence of firearms on school campuses increase the chances of gun violence. President of his Crime Prevention Research Center, Lott's study answered two questions raised by former Mayor Michael Bloomberg, another CFR stooge, by the way, the Gifford Law Center, and others. 1. Does letting teachers carry arms on campus and in the classroom increase the chance of gun violence? And 2. Does the presence of those teachers carrying legally deter mass shooters? A study released last month found we don't need to guess how the policy would work. And there has yet to be a single case of someone being wounded or killed from a shooting, let alone a mass public shooting between 6 a.m. and midnight at a school that lets teachers carry guns. And since at least January 2000, the fear that a student might grab a firearm from a teacher and use it to commit gun violence are groundless as well, said Lott. Study. Students obtaining teachers' guns have not occurred at all. Appropriately, Lott entitled his study, "Schools that allow teachers to carry guns are extremely safe." On the other hand, shootings on campuses where teachers and staff are prohibited from carrying and concealed have increased a significant doubling in number between 2001 and 2008 versus 2009 and 2018. In his study, Lott collected data on all K-12 shootings that took place on school campuses between hours of 6 a.m. and midnight on school days. He found 306 cases, but 48 of them were suicides, so that left 188 shootings. In those instances, 193 people died and 267 were either wounded or injured, but none of them occurred on any of the more than 1,000 school properties where teachers and staff were permitted to carry a sidearm. In fact, the only shooting that took place on the campus where teachers were allowed to carry occurred after hours and no one was injured. Now, let's be honest. 6 a.m. to midnight encompasses a lot of hours when no one is on campus anyway. It was a broad time period within the day, and yet that he found almost nothing. Funny, huh? The truth of the matter is, while anti-gunners are fearful of armed teachers, they're often fearful of anyone who has a gun in their possession, regardless of circumstance. Yes, I argued that includes police officers to some degree. Right now, the idea of armed teachers terrifies anti-gunners because they can't imagine someone with a gun not flipping out and killing everyone. Considering the violent rhetoric I've seen out some anti-gun advocates, I'm inclined to think a fair bit of this is projection. Regardless, it appears that while schools can be violent places, arguments that guns will somehow turn the sanient teachers into homicidal maniacs is completely unfounded. More guns, less crime, as per usual. Yep. And this is why you always got to look at why firearm-free zones don't work. They want to leave all our security eggs in one particular area. Big mistake. And the laws and the books never cut it. I remember we had the two shootings, one at in Broward County, one at the Hollywood Fort Lauderdale Airport, and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. What did they have in common? By law, they were firearm-free zones. Period. And of course, talk about Stoneman Douglas, incompetence, negligence occurred as well, based on the committee report. So what do you think? I believe the teachers should have that right. I know a lot, they love their students dearly, they'll protect them pretty damn well. Some of them are considered heroes that died. What would happen if they aren't? There's no guarantees, but there is a better chance they can stop it. And of course, like I said before, the police are obligated to protect people as well. And the public police and public school teachers. But who has the broader moral compass? That's how I look at things. And it's not NRA or anything like that. That's the damn truth. I got one more here, folks. And this one came from the 10th Amendment Center. And this one by Mike Meharry. Yeah, let's see here. Beep. It says here, Texas House passes second bill to facilitate more use of Bullion Depository. And as it reads here, on Friday, the Texas House passes a second bill that would take a step toward exempting precious metals stored in Texas Bullion Depository from certain taxes. Final passage of the legislation would take another step toward the everyday use of gold and silver in financial transactions in a Lone Star state, undermine the Federal Reserve's monopoly on money. On May 1st, the House passed Joint Resolution 95. If given final approval, a state constitutional member authorizes legislation to exempt from ad valorem taxation precious metal held in a precious metals depository located in the state would be placed on the November ballot. Ad valorem taxes are levied on private property. House Bill 2859 is enabling legislation for the amendment. Under proposed laws, precious metals are exempt from taxation and they are held in a commercial depository in the state. The law will go into effect upon approval of the constitutional amendment. On May 3rd, the House passed HB 2859 by 137 to 6. Representative Giovanni Cabraleon, Republican from Keller, sponsored both of these bills. A third, sponsored by Cabraleon, HB 3413, would exempt the Texas Bullion Depository from state franchise tax. These taxes are levied on corporations, LLCs, banks, S corporations, partnerships, and other business entities in the state. Under the proposed, a taxable entity whose only activity in the state is as bullion holder is not considered to be doing business in the state for the purpose of paying the franchise tax of filing related reports. This would effectively exempt the Texas Bullion Depository from its tax. This bill was approved by the House committee last week. Very interesting indeed. So I'm very pleased to hear about that. Final passage of the Constitutional Amendment along with HB 2089 and HB 3413 will represent another step toward and facilitate sound money in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott signed a law creating the state gold bullion and precious metal depository in the summer of 2015. The depository received its first deposit that summer. So this is the good things I agree with Abbott on. Now I'll be very frank. Ultimately, the private individuals and entities will be able to purchase goods and services using assets in the vault, the same way they use cash today. Exemption from taxation of precious metals stored in the vault will further facilitate the use of stored bullion as money. This would incentivize the use of Texas Bullion Depository if they start allowing checks and debit cards be used in conjunction with the bullion accounts. Likely the next step, it would essentially create a specie and bullion-based bank introducing currency competition with Federal Reserve notes. Constitutional tender expert Professor William Green said when people in multiple states actually start using gold and silver instead of the Federal Reserve notes, it could create a reverse Grantham effect. Yeah, one moment here. To drive out bad money. to drive out bad money, effectively nullify the Federal Reserve and to end the federal government monopoly on money. Over time, as residents of the state use both Federal Reserve notes and silver and gold coins, the fact that coins hold their value more than Federal Reserve notes will lead to reverse Grandsham's law effect, where good money, gold and silver coins, will drive out bad money. Federal Reserve notes, as this happens, a cascade of events can begin to occur, including a flow of real wealth towards the state's treasury and influx of banking business from outside the state, as people in other states carry out their desire to bank with sound money and the eventual outcry against the Federal Reserve notes for any transactions. The Texas Bullion Depository also creates an avenue toward a financial atmosphere. Countries around the world, including China, Russia, and Turkey, have been buying gold to limit their dependence on the U.S. dollar. University of Houston political scientist Brandon Ridinghouse said a state depository can serve a similar function for Texas. This is another in a long line of ways to make Texas more self-reliant and less tethered to the federal government. The final financial impact is small, but the political impact is telling. Many conservatives are interested in returning to the gold standard and circumvent the Federal Reserve whenever small way they can. What's next? HGR95 and HB 2958 will now move to the Senate for further consideration. At the time of this report, HB 2059 has not been assigned to a committee. HJR95 was referred to the Senate Property Tax Committee, where it will have to pass a majority vote before moving to the legislative process. HB 3413 will move to the floor for further consideration. Hey, I think this is really damn cool in my view. But the truth of the matter is, folks, sound money is legal. Long states can use gold and silver coins. It is guaranteed under Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. Period. No ands, ifs, or buts. If every state in the union starts doing this, it will affect the Federal Reserve big time. And I'll just say this. And we could take a dump on FDR's grave for being a yes man, for getting rid of gold in 1933. That's right. Everyone's so-called favorite president, right? Give me a break. But I like this. And Texas, blessings, man. I'm enjoying every minute of it when it comes to the Federal Reserve. All right, folks, that is it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, if you said something interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to the Decorum. Plus, I will have all my information, social media sites, email addresses, and topics, footnotes on my Spreaker page, all right? Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next